I am here at Consensus with Bernhard, the Chief Scientist at Fluence. Bernhard, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So what is it that brings you to Consensus this week?
Well, Consensus is obviously one of the biggest non-dev events in the Web3 space, so we definitely want to be here. We want to present Fluence, and we want to connect with a much broader audience than we traditionally do, which is hackathons and really, really close to the developer.
And is this your first Consensus?
This is our first Consensus as a sponsor and booth operator, if you will.
Okay.
But I have been, being a Texas native, I have been at Consensus before.
You've been around it for a while.
So, love it, like it.
When did you first get into the crypto space?
I had multiple entries. My first entry was like very, very early with a spare machine doing some CPU mining. I abandoned it Bitcoin.
Way back. What year was that? That was
It was like, I got in around, I think, 13, 14.
Oh, my goodness.
But I was so stupid and incompetent managing my wallet, which I was much better at the mining part, setting up the rig, than the wallet management, that I kept losing my keys, and it took a while to sink in.
Oh, no.
So, anyway. And then I sort of moved away from that, in part because mining obviously changed very significantly. I was working at an IoT startup at the time, and so it was just a spare. And then when Ethereum came on the scene, it became very, very interesting. I was massively misled what smart contracts actually can do. Nevertheless, well, I thought, I believed the hype at the time, and I had unsolved distributed compute problems from my prior work at IBM, and I thought smart contracts would be the silver bullet or the golden bullet or the platinum bullet, and well, they weren't the platinum bullet, but they were the silver bullet. So I got really interested in space, really started understanding what smart contracts are capable of, what blockchains are actually good for, not what people told me they were good for, but what they're actually good for. Got involved with some open source projects, sort of on the side, and eventually got, I think, full-time in with a blockchain company that is a chief scientist that raised significant money in the 17 ICO boom. Worked there for a while, then moved on, worked on MPC, threshold signature startup, for a while, but then COVID hit, and then 2.5 years ago ended up with Fluence.
I'm very interested in Fluence, but I just want to go back for a moment. You said you learned what smart contracts are good for and what they're not good for. What would you say they're best suited for?
I think they're very well suited for well-constrained, contextually finite transactions. So one of the things is, and you got to stick within that context. So one of the things I always heard early on was like, oh, you use the smart contract, you get that key for that Airbnb, and you pay, and it's a trustless transaction, everything's fine. And I said, well, yeah, but what if the Airbnb doesn't exist? Oh,
yeah,
we'll put up a stake. Well, yeah, but how much is the stake relative to what it costs me flying from Austin to, I don't know, Greece, to end up somewhere in the middle of nowhere with no Airbnb, even though I have a digital key for it? So, and then sort of the explanations kept, for me being very naive, was, well, you have more stake, then you have more stake. But eventually when you added it up, people would have had put up millions of dollars of stake, in which of course wouldn't happen.
Yep.
So then we started looking, then I got interested in how you actually can use it. What are reasonable transactions? And in many respects that the value has to be bound or boundable by the stake, otherwise it just doesn't work. So you don't just solve all trust problems through the trustless transaction.
That's right. There's still the counterparty risk.
Yes.
Like if you're going to be tokenizing supply chain, you still have to trust the people that are putting that supply on the blockchain are not lying to you.
Right. And so it makes this thing apparent that trust in it by itself isn't fully replaceable.
Yes.
But you can create environments with very, very low transaction costs that are very, very effective in managing counterparty risk.
And with the low transaction costs, which chains are you mostly speaking of or building upon?
Well, I mean, the L2, so let me go back on the transaction costs. Transaction costs are tricky, right? Because you not only have the gas, you actually pay for facilitated transaction on chain, but you actually have associated costs that build up to literally creating the transaction and then processing the transaction. So ease of use of a blockchain is very commonly undervalued by early adopters or first adopters, because there's so much more. It's like, how do you index the blockchain? Who do you use to index the blockchain? Do you need your own indexing? Can you rely on somebody else? What skill set do you need to do the indexing? And on it goes. And the sheer number of companies that keep mushrooming in the indexing space alone just show you how difficult it is to commoditize in a homogeneous manner the indexing problem. You can't, because different environments need different indexing, and nobody can do all the indexing cost effectively for all the data. It's just fundamentally impossible.
So Bernhard, clearly you have a lot of experience in this space. You have a lot of history.
A lot of failures.
You've learned from experience, right? Someone asked me once, well, if I lose my keys, can I call someone? I'm like, no, it's decentralized. There's nobody to call if you lose your keys. So that's very
You can call people, it's just not going to help.
That's not going to help you. So given all that, tell me what drew you to Fluence and what's the use case of the company? First of all, what does Fluence do? And what's the use case?
Fluence is building a decentralized serverless protocol, which basically, just to put a context, you can think of as decentralizing Amazon Lambda. So basically an execution model where you pay on a per execution level, as opposed to renting space like an EC2 container for a certain period of time. We're not interested in this space just yet. We're really interested in function as a service and the execution and decentralized presentation of that context. And we believe, just like Filecoin has demonstrated in the storage space, maybe not to the extent, Filecoin has shown that they can reduce cloud provider costs by 100x on the data side. We believe we can do it in the 20 to 50x side on compute. So that's the protocol.
Okay.
And that's what we've been building. We're currently on testnet. We're moving on mainnet by the end of the year. Now I got to qualify what testnet and mainnet means. We're an off-chain protocol, and what's on-chain is our marketplace with respect to capacity providers and our compute verification model with respect to the accuracy of the execution of your services by peers. I mean, it's an open, permissionless network. We don't run it. I mean, we provide reference peer. Anybody who wants to modify whatever can participate. So trust is not necessarily available at the peer level, and therefore we need verification of their work in order to be able to make sure the money you as a developer put up and want to pay for your services to be executed to actually be allocated, or those providers being slashed.
And what is the timeline for your launching? Are you fully funded? You said you're moving over to the second. You're moving from test
mainnet. Yeah, so we are on a test environment right now, and end of the year we're looking for mainnet. And so mainnet means we want to have a large number of high quality capacity providers.
Yeah.
So we're talking a lot with Filecoin miners, for example, which are very high grade. We're very interested in competing for centralized cloud serverless users against those players. And so we want to be able to offer SLAs in at least at the level they're providing. Probably, trying to be in excess, even with better SLAs, at a much lower price point.
And what is your hope being here at Consensus?
Consensus actually been really, it's really interesting because it's a very unique mix of participants, visitors, both from investor perspective, but also from a adopter perspective, not so much the hardcore developer, which we reach through hackathons. We're in East Denver, in those areas, but the management side of IT. So we've talked a lot to CTOs, CIOs, project leads that are here at Consensus, and that's very interesting for us, not only in terms of spreading our message,
Yeah.
but also getting feedback.
Yeah.
And it's been luckily extremely positive feedback so far, so it's been great. But you do need feedback. We've been heads down for the last 2.5 years, 3 years developing.
Yeah.
And now we're in a validation phase to a certain extent. And Consensus has been proven so far extremely helpful in for us conducting that kind of research.
That's excellent. And I think the space has been so beat up over the last 2 years.
Yes.
People probably have war stories, and they've all kind of learned different things. So coming together, people of like minds.
Yeah, and also sort of as said, like we really want to compete against big cloud providers at their own game. So it's important for us, even though the Web3 community itself is our home.
Yeah.
It's our home community. It's good to reach out to people and interact with potential adopters that don't necessarily have the Web3 ethos. They don't bleed the Web3 ethos, but are still interested in taking advantage of what this, Web3 and decentralized, highly distributed systems can provide them with.
Or maybe even pushing back against the monopoly that companies like Amazon would have.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of pressure points for existing users of those cloud services, regardless of the Web3 component, which is simply lack of portability, lack of sort of provider-based failover. You can very easily build failover within the cloud provider. That's fine. But it's not that simple, or it's very expensive to build failover across cloud providers. And in a system, a platform like ours, where peers are your providers, you're fully portable. Your business logic is implemented in WebAssembly. You just move it. There nothing changes. Your orchestration engine, it's called Aqua for us. It doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the content addressability of your web service or function as a service.
I love having minds like yourself that have been in the space for a long time, and even longer in software development, doing these creative products right now. And
Well, thank you.
how can people get a hold of you?
Fluence.network.
Okay.
Fluence.chat, which gets you to our Discord. There are multiple channels, including developer channels. So if you're a developer listening, reach out. As I said, we're in testnet, so we're extremely motivated to help you succeed at this stage, and help you realize your ideas on how to use decentralized serverless into your DApp or whatever you're building.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate you taking your time to come over to our little booth.
Well, love it, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And to all our listeners, thanks for listening. And if you please follow, and subscribe to get more content.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. We had a great time here at Consensus. At the Texas Blockchain Council, we are striving to be the nexus between traditional industries, banking, finance, legal, energy, and the digital asset industry. So we want to help you get your brand in front of those kinds of companies with B2B opportunities. Reach out to us if that's of interest for membership or for sponsorship at the summit. Hope to see you there in November in Fort Worth. Thanks again. We look forward to seeing you at the summit.